Yeah, we have a very special guest today. Could you do me a favor and introduce yourself?
Hi, so I'm Arlene Bello. I'm a psychiatric social worker with the County of Los Angeles, working for Department of Mental Health.
Dope, dope. Appreciate you jumping on today. Um, so
Mhm.
what I wanted to ask is, your work is very specific to what we do here, which is interesting, right? Because there is a lot of talk of what we should do and what we could do with youth offenders. So if I may ask, what's your motivation behind it? Like, what made you want to get into this line of work?
Um, well, I think it was just basically a calling. I think growing up, I had two, really loving parents. They came from Mexico. I'm first generation born here in the US, but I think a lot of my family, a lot of cousins, they were in the DCFS system. A lot of them went to juvenile hall camp, prison. And I think at a young age, I just kind of wanted to help my family. And in turn, it ended up trying to help the rest of my community, which I guess specifically would be the Chicano community.
Dope, dope. And how old were you when you kind of seen like, because I know what it's like when you're young, you want to help, but sometimes you don't know
Hmm.
what to do, like how you're gonna do it. But what age were you when you figured out like this is what I want to do? Like you knew where you were headed.
I think as young as high school, I remember being in high school just thinking like seeing all my friends getting locked up, going away. And I just kept thinking like, you know, I was always interested, like why them, like what happened, and being around their families, I kind of saw the dysfunction. I saw the different types of abuse, and I just really wanted to help and do something to try to avoid it from getting to that point.
What do you think it was that they prevented you from taking those steps like everybody else? Everybody else around you sounds like a lot of people were going to
Hmm.
jail, going, you said camp,
Hmm.
and now,
Hmm.
and as adults, I would assume, furthering that. What prevented you from going that route and starting going to college?
I think my dad was a major force in my life. Like I think a lot of the people that were caught up in those situations, either their fathers were also involved in the system or their parents, they had to work and they weren't around. And I think my dad, he had a accident and he had to be home a lot. So I think he was just so on me that I was just fearful of my dad. And I just,
Yeah,
I remember I would go to ditching parties and hang out, but I remember being like, I gotta get home, where my other friends, they didn't have it like that.
yeah,
And I
they
think
could
my
ditch
mom
and
too.
stay out there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And my dad grew up in a border town in Juarez, Mexico. So he like was a lot around a lot of addicts. He was around just a lot. So he was just really, really hard on me and my siblings. And my mom, she always would, make me go to church. And at first I hated it, but then I saw the value in it and I was like, okay, so now I see like she was just on me too. So I think that's what really, really helped me steer clear from a lot of the stuff that I could have been involved in.
dope, dope. And when it comes to going to college now, I know there's a lot of young Chicanos going to college, but for a while
Hmm.
it wasn't like that. How was
Right.
your college experience? Did you was there a lot of other Chicanos and Chicanas there, or was did you kind of feel like a fish out of water?
Oh, definitely. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt this was back in 2005. I ended up going, well, I started at ELAC. So I started in community college, did like 5 years there. Then I went to Cal State Northridge. I felt so out of place. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I didn't know anything. And then a few years after that, I started with, I got my master's in social work at USC. And everybody was young. Nobody was, I'm 40 years old. So everybody was like in their 20s. I just felt really out of place. I would always question myself. But, now that I do the work I do, I figured that this was all for a reason and a purpose. And I'm just so grateful that I had that opportunity.
Oh, definitely. I know Cal State Northwood, don't they have the NAWA program within the
They
Chicago counties?
do. They
Yeah,
do.
that's
Yeah.
dope. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I'm
wanted to,
so
but
interested in that.
yeah, I always wanted to go, but I was like, that's fucking far. So hopefully they offer some online courses.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely moved out there because it was way too far. I was in the San Gabriel Valley at that time, so
Yeah.
it was way too far for me too. Yeah.
So you start your work. Did you immediately start with the with the juvenile halls, or did you end up somewhere else first and then make your way to juvenile hall?
So I started at an agency in the Compton Watts area called Shields for Families. So that was my introduction because these were all kids coming out of the system. So I was in charge of doing family therapy,
Mhm.
and it was in home. So it was all the way live. I mean, you saw everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. I mean, I had my little 12, 13-year-old clients, walking me to my car because I was walking from outside the projects, going to my car, and they'd make sure that nobody did anything to my car. And so that was my introduction. Once I left there, I applied at the county, then I started at the camps. And then I went to the halls. And it was interesting because during this time, a lot of the laws were changing and things were moving so fast that a lot of the kids, basically a lot of the kids that we have right now, Javier, are kids that would have been in YA. But because the laws have changed so much, we have kids that have beat 187s. We have kids that got a lot of DA rejects. So basically, they would have been doing years and they got these little camp programs. And I always remind them, I'm like, kid, if you were in my generation, you would have been washed up, juvenile life, you have it so good. But, you don't really know how good you got it until you experience something like that.
Yeah. So what are the most severe cases that go to within the right now within the county with the county setting? What are the most severe cases that'll go there? Like carjacking, will they make it there?
Oh yeah, strong arm robbery, carjacking. I'm telling you, even murder. A lot of the lawyers get them down to how do you call it? Grave bodily injury. And let's say the person wasn't deceased, the person is still alive. They'll get it down to grave bodily injury and basically end up in camp.
How long do they do for something like that?
Usually about 7 to 9 months. They could get an early release, and that's if they do everything really well. So usually our really sophisticated kids that could run a good camp, know how to finesse the staff, know how to work the system, they can get out early because they basically have the skills to kind of get by. But our other kids, our most traumatized kids, the kids that have been abused, that have, so many issues, a lot of them struggle because they don't know how to self-regulate. They don't know how to cope. They don't know how to deal with other peers and adults.
One thing that made it kind of interesting for me, or I'd say made my stay in Y a little bit more interesting than it had to be, was the fact that I was not good with discipline. I was not good with following instructions. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I always said, like, I don't think I would have made it in the camp system because
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't good. But maybe it would have been better for me because I went to a place that
Mm-hmm.
really didn't have that structure. What do you guys do with kids like that? Kids that are not good with discipline or structure and they're just used to chaos.
So it's kind of different. It depends where you go. Like where I'm at, since I'm at the new LA model, we don't have a shoe. So we have a cottage, an empty cottage called the Mindfulness Center. So basically, right there, it's like you have a game room, you have a weight room, you have different activities to get you away from your peers or whatever's going on at the moment. Let's say there was a riot or whatever, but you're not in a lockup room. Now, when I was at Challenger, you have a huge shoe and kids are locked up there for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And
So
that's where you really see the mental illness really like be
yeah,
affected and become increased. Yeah.
I do want to get back to that, but let me ask, what is it that exactly that you do there at the camp?
So currently I'm considered a teen navigator. So what I do is I go to all the meetings, I go to their initial meetings, their mid meetings, their transitional. We talk about, are they ready to, go back into society? What have they learned? What coping skills, basically have they completed all the conditions of probation? So I have a seat at the table. So it's really good because you know how it is. It's like you're going to get everything with your colleagues. You're going to get people there for a check and you're going to get people there because they really care and they really want to help these kids.
Yeah.
So, I'm very fortunate. I'm very grateful that I'm able to say that I can really, share my voice and speak up for the kids, just the kids, like you said, how you were like, those are my favorite kids, the kids that just cannot function with the rest of their peers. They're always fighting. Like those are the best ones because they're the most challenging, but those are the kids that you get the most fulfillment because not only do they get something out of me, but I learned so much from them. And I really value having that time with them and having that relationship that I could really take that on to the next kid. And then it's like, okay, I learned something new because I don't believe in a cookie cutter type of therapy. I like to really individualize it. And every kid is different. Everybody has a different story. So I like to really, just kind of really get to know them.
So I do want to get back to that, but now I want to go back to the lockup list you were talking about. One thing when I was in Nellis, when I went to, you go to the dorms, it's pretty standard. You see everybody in there. You see some people. Looking back now, I kind of trip out like, wow, shit, like they were really traumatized or they had some kind of emotional trauma in their life. There was a kid that he wet the bed every morning. And what's the saddest part about that is that the staff would, if you didn't behave, they say, I'm gonna move your bed over to sleep next to him. So kind of put him in a position where he's like, everybody knows what he's going through. They kind of embarrass him more, right? So that was the first kind of sign. Well, not really the first. There was a few people on there that had some real mental issues. But when I saw it really, really elevated, where I was like, "Oh shit, what's going on here?" Is when I went to lockup, like you were saying. In lockup, I don't know what that does, like what that does to a kid. But a lot of times you see these kids acting wild and doing stuff that you just like, whoa, I seen a kid rub feces all over himself. Yeah. Another kid cut his wrist and smeared blood all over the window. Right. Just all kinds of crazy shit, right?
Yeah,
I remember thinking to myself a lot of times, like, these kids do not belong here with us. And I was like, maybe I didn't belong there too. Obviously, I didn't belong there too. I was a child. But I kind of felt like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm a gangster. This is what we do. I wasn't too sure if they knew what they were doing or if they knew what was ahead of them. For me, it was more like I was really like, whoa, they need to be somewhere else. What do you guys do with children like that, or what do you think about that situation in general?
Well, definitely, again, I'm so glad that laws are changing because, now you can't have a kid locked up in solitary. It's supposed to be no more than 2 hours at a time, and they're supposed to be getting checked up on. They're supposed to be let out in the day room. Mental health is supposed to be going, seeing them, spending time with them. It's not supposed to get to that level. So basically, that was a major form of negligence that, young minds are not meant to be isolated like that. I'm no human being, but so much more young children because they're still, their brain and, I'm sure you know about like a little bit about neuroscience and the whole, the prefrontal cortex and now developing to now they're saying 26. They were saying 25, but now they're saying 26. So the lack of stimuli for a child to not have any form of, communication or any form of just having anything there. It's just a straight up solid room is extremely detrimental to their mind. So it just exacerbates all their trauma. And, usually in the community, they're getting high, they're self-medicating. And, of course, things don't make it into these facilities. Sadly, adults bring it in. But if they don't have any access to any drugs or alcohol, then they're really, really coping with their trauma and all their PTSD and all their memories. And it's just very, very sad.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I always I don't have any kind of degree in anything. Barely finished. I got my GED in Nellis. So I don't know how correct I am in my assessment, but from what I see, and this is just my little theory. I'm not sure if there's, if there's a more educated explanation to this. But what I kind of see, the way I look at it is with a lot of these children, especially like I take a lot of it from my past experiences, right? You kind of have a lot of trauma from being a child, right? Whether you come in if there's a abusive, you see domestic violence, see your parents being arrested and all that, right? So you have one level of trauma there. And then as you start turning to the streets, you start adding to that and start like layering kind of, if you will.
Yeah.
Homies that passed away, interactions with police.
Yeah.
And then after that, you get busted, and you just add to that. So it's kind of crazy because from the way I look at it is there's so much to unravel within that trauma before you get to the original traumatizing kind of events. Am I right in that, or is
Oh,
that...
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, they come in with, you know, a backpack fully loaded with, you know, all their upbringing dysfunction. Now you add the streets, now you add all the violence that they witness, and then you add again law enforcement, all the trauma that they put on them and the brainwashing. And these kids are so messed up. And this generation, I feel so bad for them, because at least us, you know, we were able to have, you know, normal communication. We'd go outside, we'd talk to people. But now this tech world, I mean, these kids are really, really struggling with social skills and emotional skills and
Interesting.
and all that.
So what are they? Yeah, that's kind of crazy because a lot of people are online. What are these kids like nowadays? Are they? A lot of people say they're not hardcore, they're not this, but I would imagine they're committing crimes or doing that. They're just like as damaged and you know, and have the same issues. But what makes them different, and how is it different to speak to them?
It's so different. It's funny, even, you know, I've been doing this probably a good 10 years now, and every year they change. It's very hard for them to connect emotionally with somebody. It's very hard for them to trust. Where back in the day, I felt like it was instant connection, just being a Chicana, you know, looking like their mom or whatever. There was a lot of trust and rapport built really quick, and they would open up, and, you know, and I would be able to help them a lot. You know, when I started in the system, Javier, it was very toxic in terms of probation and mental health. I mean, people were just gangbanging on each other in terms of like the system.
Yeah.
And it was so bad because they hated us so much. They did not want us there. They called us hug-a-thugs. They called us, you know, that we just babied these kids and, you know, all kinds of stuff. So we went through so much. So like having to do child abuse reports on staff that were breaking kids' arms, punching them in the face, like extreme forms of abuse. I mean, man, it was rough. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to like, oh, you know, be a victim, but I kind of got a taste of, wow, like you guys feel like this, we feel like this. I mean, it's a whole systemic issue that really, really needs to change. So I'm so glad we're going in a different direction, but it's sad because back to these kids, because they're so different from back in the day, staff can really brainwash them and be like, oh, you're snitching to mental health, I thought you were a gangster, blah blah blah. And sorry about that. And basically give me 1 second.
Yeah, so that all is very, very interesting. She'll be back on right now. But yeah, that is it's a trip because you see
Sorry about that.
Okay. What the impacts they have. Yeah, no problem.
Sorry, taking care of my dog. So yeah, so basically yeah, it's a lot of brainwashing on them, and just getting them to open up and trust us was really hard. And we still go through that. We still have kids that don't want to say, and it's like, well, you know, I know you didn't get into a fight, you know, how'd you get that bruise? And it's very challenging for them to say anything, especially when they know somebody's gonna speak up. So we're just in a difficult situation.
What happens when the staff commit a violation like that and you write a report? How do you feel when like there's no action taken against them?
It's very disheartening because, you know, staff will turn their back on you, and we need them for a lot of things, you know, even just to get into the building, you know, have you wait out there for a long time. A lot of passive aggressive stuff, but for the most part, they usually move them. They'll move them to another facility. I mean, they don't lose their job, but they get moved. So, you know, we don't have to deal with them so much anymore, but we have to deal with their colleagues or
Their
their
homies.
coworkers. Yeah, basically. Yeah. So that gets hard. And then also the racial divide is so strong in these facilities, you know, with the black and brown situation, and staff feeding into that, which is it's just so disappointing. You know what I mean? Where in 2021, you would think that people are not as ignorant, but if anything, we're probably even getting worse. Who knows?
That's interesting because when I was busted, that is one thing I noticed in most cottages. I did see some cottages where that wasn't the case, but that's for different reasons. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll explain a little bit. So I did notice normally with the Chicano staff, they would look out for us. The black staff
Mm-hmm.
would look out, for the African American kids. And then
Yeah.
the only time that was ever not the case is when you had a group that was more dominant on that cottage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
then everyone would work with that group to try to. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the saddest part about why there's a lot of sad
Mm-hmm.
parts. But this is one of the saddest parts is that they would try to work with who they felt were the leaders to
Mm-hmm.
control everybody else. So it's like, hey, you need
Mm-hmm.
drugs, you need this, you need that. Like, just keep
Mm-hmm.
the shit down. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's what you would see a lot of. And
Mm-hmm.
but for the most part, I would see, like, you're right, that racial divide, and would pick up on that and be like, is he
Mm-hmm.
cool? Like, nah, he's not cool. We'll ask him, and then you wait
Mm-hmm.
instead of
Mm-hmm.
having that trust in everybody. You really couldn't trust
Mm-hmm.
anyone, to tell you the truth. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So how do you deal with that? You in your position?
It's funny. I think the best approach for me, it's like, yeah, I approach the shot callers, with the respect and everything, but I also go to the very quiet kids, the kids that they just want to be left alone. They don't want to deal with the politics and all that stuff. And I go and I give them that same amount of attention, support. And I notice that it kind of throws them off. The kids are kind of like, wait, what? Like, why is she spending time with that, square or whatever? But I want them to know, like, hey, I'm going to treat you guys all equal. It doesn't matter, the status in your neighborhood or whatever. That's one thing. But at least with me, like, you guys are all children and you guys are all going to get the same amount of support. And, it's challenging because you naturally, as humans, we connect with certain people more than others. So I try to be mindful of that. And I try to give a lot of African American kids a lot of support too, because I don't want them to feel like, oh, she just hangs out with the Latino kids or whatever. But sometimes it's just easier with your own culture because they'll either A, trust you quicker, or B, not really trust you, because sometimes looking like their mom is not helpful because
Yeah.
their mom did some horrible things to them and they're not trying to mess with me. So sometimes it is easier with the African American kids, connecting with them, because I don't look like anybody in their family, and they'll open up a lot, So it's a hit or miss. I mean, it's not easy. It's every kid is a puzzle that you have to figure out, but
Yeah.
it's good work. You know what I mean? I love what I do, and I'm so grateful every day to be able to spend time. And the little bit of change that I can do, I feel like, hey, that's something's better than nothing. Because when I watch your podcast and I hear your guests and I hear everything you guys experience, it's very heartbreaking that not much has changed. And, all we can do is our part.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what's a trip to me is that I've only interviewed one young kid. And it was like you said, it was heartbreaking because I wasn't sure. With all of my guests, I know the ending,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I know that all of the no, despite what we hear them say, I know they're gonna make it out all right because they're standing there in front of me talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it
Mm-hmm.
easier. With that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
kid, it was heartbreaking because it's like I don't know what's gonna happen. There's three
Mm-hmm.
different things that could happen, right? He could end up
Mm-hmm.
dead, he could end up in jail, or
Right.
he could be a dope fiend, or he could make four things really, or he could make it out here, like
Mm-hmm.
one of us. So
Right.
it's sad
Right.
because like I don't know which path he's gonna. I know which path
Mm-hmm.
he's gonna take,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know where he's gonna eventually end up at. So doing these
Mm-hmm.
kind of interviews is a lot easier for me because I know where they're gonna end up. I know where they
Mm-hmm.
are. I know they change their lives around. So, but yeah, that's true. It's crazy that things haven't changed much. But let me ask you
Mm-hmm.
about in your line of work. This is something that's very, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, and I want to expand on it. Very important. That's trust, right?
Yeah.
Getting the
Mm-hmm.
trust of somebody. For me, I was told at a young age, and you mentioned snitching earlier. Don't
Mm-hmm.
snitch on us. To my parents,
Mm-hmm.
like, don't you dare snitch on us. If the school asks you what's going on, you don't tell them anything. So it was
Mm-hmm.
hard for me to get any kind of therapy. I think I was about
Mm-hmm.
30 years old before I started opening up, because I was like, nothing happened to my parents now, like,
Yeah, yeah.
right, yeah. So, but how hard is it to gain that trust to get them to open up, and what do you do to assure them that maybe even though their parents made mistakes, they're not going to be punished for them in a way where they're going to jail or they're going to be taken away from their custody? What do you do? Because I know that there are certain lines. Of course,
Yeah.
you have to report, right? Like any kind of
Right.
uh, inappropriate touching, anything like that, or any kind of abuse. But like, let's say if there's just stuff from back in the day that happened, how do you approach that and gain their trust?
So yeah, it's a lot of different ways. Number one, because the way the laws are stated, you know, for example, let's say you know, a 16-year-old boy sadly has a relationship with a 21-year-old girl. Because they're not under 14, most of the time DCFS is not going to even pick up that case. So I kind of assure them that there's a lot of ways that we can go about it, but I let them know, you know, in terms of their parents, you know, they can protect them as much as they want, but I let them know, like, there's certain things that, you know, for example, if there's other siblings in the home that are still really young and there's a chance that parents are still abusing, you know, their siblings that are young, I tell them that's where the line gets drawn. So I always let them know these are the non-negotiable. These are the things that if you tell me, you know, I have to at least consult, you know, at least consult my boss. It doesn't mean anything's gonna happen. It doesn't mean you're not gonna go home. It just means that I need to consult because at the end of the day, I need to keep you guys safe. And I think that just being upfront with them from the beginning helps a lot. I think when you don't explain to kids what the process is and what's going on, I think that's when they feel betrayed or they feel mistrust because they feel like, hey, you know, I wasn't warned.
Yeah,
But I think when, you know, yeah.
that's true, because you can be like, oh, she's cool. She'll talk to me, and then you be like,
Mm-hmm.
you call your mom and dad, be like, oh, what the fuck? What happened there? You find out the news there, and you're like, damn, I trusted you. Like what did you
Mm-hmm.
do? Yeah, so that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. And if you're up front with them, then you let them
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Another thing that helps is like I don't get too chummy with the law enforcement. You know, I see them as colleagues, you know, hey, how are you? Good morning. And I just call it a day. I don't mingle with them a lot because I don't want the kids to feel in any type of way that I would share any of their, you know, delicate information to them. So that also helps get the trust
Yeah.
going because they see me as different. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know that for I still wouldn't know. It's crazy. I'm putting myself in the position of your minors, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
still wouldn't know what to say to open up to you, to be honest. So it must be a
Mm-hmm.
difficult thing for them, because
Yeah.
yeah, at this age I could say whatever I want. Like I said, there's not going to
Mm-hmm.
be any blowback. My dad's, he's right there. He passed away, so there's nothing gonna
Mm.
happen to him. My mom,
Right.
she's there's nothing's gonna happen to her. But
Mm-hmm.
as a kid, that must be difficult. Like, yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
I think your approach is dope, but it probably does take a while, right? Like, it's not
Yeah.
instantaneous.
It usually takes a while, but surprisingly, I guess doing it for so very long and because I'm so comfortable in my role, it doesn't take too long, which I'm like, man, I'm grateful because I'm like, I'm so glad that they can trust me so quickly. And I think it's because if you come in, you know, kids know who's real and who's fake. If you come in genuine, you come in, and you know, they all ask each other, what's up with that lady? She cool? She not? You know what I mean? And they do the whole background check on you. And once they see like, oh yeah, you know, speed man, whatever, then it's so easy to just kind of just go in. And I always tell them, you know, if there's something too personal, if there's something that you don't feel comfortable, please let me know. This is your treatment. This is your therapy. Like I always tell them, you're the driver. I'm just rolling shotgun with you. Wherever you want to go, I'll grow with you. But I will tell you, hey, you know, you're going to the right. I don't think we should go down that alley. Um, I will give you the heads up if I think you're gonna tell me something that you are not ready or you're not comfortable in sharing yet.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, you know. So just being real with them and just because I love this population so much and I always have. I've always been intrigued by Nellis. I saw when it was closing down and all that, and I've always just been really into this population. So for me, it's a calling more than a job.
What are some of the success stories you've seen that they really surprised you? Or like, wow, I can't like you really did it, or she really did it.
Yeah, like when I have kids, I don't want to have anything to do with their mom. And when we've done like some intense, deep family therapy, that's been very fulfilling to me. And then, they'll call me and be like, oh, I'm having a baby, and my mom was there and she came, and just a lot of family reunification type of stories
Hmm.
um, are just so happy for me to hear. And it just makes it so much better knowing they didn't end up in the penitentiary. A lot of kids I would have thought, oh man, this one for sure going to prison, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't end up there for whatever reason. I'm not saying it's me. I'm just thinking like it's a lot of different factors in their life. But I think just having that space to open up and kind of just talk about their struggles and talk with their family openly in a safe place. And they're not at home, so it's not like they have to go home and be uncomfortable around their mom or whatever. It's like they're
Yeah,
still in camp, so they could share and they could have a timeout and a break,
have a little bit of
and
time to
it's a
work
good
through it.
thing. Yeah, exactly.
So now I'm going to ask you some questions, if it's okay, about the system in general and where it's going. So
Okay.
of course, obviously the DJJ is shutting down.
Right.
I don't think any more wards are being sent from LA County, correct?
Right, exactly. No, that's it. They cut the admittance June 2021, so that's it.
So for the more severe youth offenders, do you know what's happening with them? Let's say somebody who's 13 that committed a murder.
hmm
And I know in California, what do you have to be? Is it still 14 to go to prison?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I don't even think they're even going to prison anymore. I think it's just they're gonna get the 7 years, which would be the juvenile life, and then from there they go to parole and see where they're at that point.
so what happens to like a 13-year-old that commits a crime like that? Where as of right now, do you know where they're going?
As of now, they're stationed in the compound at Barry J, the juvenile hall right there, and they're gonna stay there until they figure out where DJJ is eventually gonna end up. There's a lot of talk they're gonna be at Kilpatrick, then they're gonna head on to Camp Scott. So it's kind of all over right now. A lot of people are sending the message out to these communities, and community members do not want the YA kids in their homes. Well, in their communities. They don't want them at Scott, Santa Clarita. They don't want them at Kilpatrick, Malibu. These
Which
are
is
affluent
interesting because
people.
they've had them in Whittier for years.
Exactly. Exactly. It's dumb, but they're just
Yeah.
they're going back to that whole super predator mentality where they're going to be in your backyard, and or they don't want the family members, being in their community, shopping on Sundays, visiting day or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of moving pieces to it, but it's so very interesting because it's they're not even different from our camp kids. If anything, some of our camp kids are more sophisticated than these kids that got caught up their first time, their first charge. And so I see them, they're all the same to me. They're all children that need a lot of help, but going in with that fearful mindset, like, oh my goodness, this kid is gonna kill me. I mean, you're already setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true because I and it's hard to tell, and it doesn't. I'm not justifying or rationalizing, but the truth of the matter is, most of the time when kids commit crimes, um, especially violent crimes, they're
hmm
against other people, like the
Right,
same the other gang members,
right,
right?
right. Their
Hardly ever
peers.
they're gonna rob an old lady. They're not gonna
hmm
rob somebody, or they're not going to beat down and shoot somebody walking their dog. It's like it's
hmm
very rare
hmm
for something like that to happen. A lot of times
Absolutely.
they're gonna be shooting at each other and hurting each other.
hmm hmm
Not
hmm
that makes it any better, but I'm just like, for them, I don't know why they'd
Right.
be so fearful.
hmm
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of that going around. I think everybody, well, a lot of people are fearful in general. They're not happy with the new DA, Mr. Gascon, and making all these changes to the laws, and they're really upset. They feel like crime has skyrocketed, but I mean, it's like it's always been there. The 90s was even worse than now, but people are saying that we're going back to that era. I don't know.
yeah. I think there's a lot of factors to that, though, right? Like,
hmm
so. I don't know. I would say maybe work on those factors more. I
Right.
think it's always gonna be like that. With I don't know. People they just see the problem, the the, the
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
the main part of the problem without understanding what the real problem is behind it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They see
Mm-hmm.
the edge, like the tip of the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
now I want to get back to and you said they're in the compound in Silmore, correct?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, so they're in the compound in Silmore. That's W, X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Right there.
yeah, for those who don't know, it's in Silmore, and I believe it's in the middle of the institution. There is a compound
Mm-hmm.
with the W, I forgot where it is, but I know it's W, X, Y, and I think Z's on the top. I'm not sure.
Z.
I forget. Yeah, I forgot
Mm-hmm.
exactly how it's set up. Uh, and it's basically I forgot. It's weird to explain it. Like it's yeah, it's
It's a
like
jail and a
doors.
jail.
Yeah, doors all the way around. There's something in the middle that
Mm-hmm.
separates it. There's upstairs, downstairs,
Mm-hmm.
but those are broken off. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't really interact with each other.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so and that's in the middle of the jail.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that's, in your honest opinion, that's an appropriate place to keep the severe youth offenders for now?
I really don't think so. I think they should be in a much better setting. I don't think that's healthy to have them in that institutional environment. A lot of my colleagues disagree with me. They really don't want them in Kilpatrick or Scott. They feel like that's not secure enough. But I'm like, well, if you're that scared of these kids, then maybe you don't belong working with them, because I think they deserve an opportunity to have a more um, just a healthier space, have greenery, have more home-like environment, which is
Yeah.
what the new LA model is pushing for, the home-like environment, not the institutional typical setting. You go in your room, which is really a cell, and you're there all day. I don't think that's right.
I agree. Reason for that is in that compound they don't have a yard. There's no
Right.
yard for them to walk around in. You stay, all there is rooms and the day room
Mm-hmm.
right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not much movement. I believe that
Mm-mm.
when I was there in Unit Y, when I was going to YA, school came to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we
Yeah.
didn't leave for
Mm-hmm.
school. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Visiting came there. Everything went
Mm-hmm.
there. So we hardly left
Mm-hmm.
that place.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and if you're there
The
for what?
same.
Yeah, I was there for about 3 months, and that shit could drive you like a little mad sometimes. Like, man, this place
Mm-hmm.
fucking sucks. Like, send me anywhere. Just get me the fuck out of here.
Right.
So yeah, so like at that point, like I'll go to prison. Like, fuck this place. Like, get me out of here. So but that's it's a trip because yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that's a healthy setting for children who are considered
Mm-mm.
severe youth offenders because they have years
Right.
ahead of them, and you don't
Right.
want to start off their treatment with
Right.
with that on that note. That's the way I look at
Mm-hmm.
it. I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no expert, but
No, absolutely. I agree. I don't think that's right at all. And I just think that knowing all the science that we know now about the brain and where we are with trauma and trauma-informed care, those are the buzzwords these days. But I just think that people really need to just stop talking about it and start doing it.
definitely. So and you said right now there is no real plan that
There's
they
no real plan. There's just a lot of ideas, but from my understanding is the clock is ticking, and January they need to figure out a place because they really do not want to keep these kids here in the compound much longer.
how is it that they can do that? Not have a plan because haven't they had about what 3 years
Yeah.
to
Yeah, but it's kind of like you said, the county, they're not equipped to deal with this level, or sadly, because they used to use a lot of old school tactics, which is like you mentioned, the group control, having the shot collar control, or a lot of shaming, shaming the kid, wetting the bed. They're not allowed to do those things anymore. And although I'm sure they still happen, they don't happen in any way frequent as they used to. Now there's a lot of cameras everywhere. Kilpatrick, they have these brand new state of the art. I mean, you could hear whispers. So people have really gotten caught up. And I think that's what really keeps the staff in check, because once it's hurting their pocket, they're gonna watch themselves. So yeah.
I believe I read a report that they said there's maybe like a handful of severe predators, right? There's not even enough for a full institution.
Mm-hmm,
Am I
mm-hmm.
correct?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, you did. It is that. It's like there's like 13 kids waiting right now to go to the new, it's called SYTF, Secure Youth Treatment Facility, which is the new DJJ.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Allen
only like
County.
13 kids.
Yeah. So
Right.
that's what's crazy to me is that you they always want to, like you said, make these wild assumptions and this crazy propaganda that you have all these youth offenders out there when crime is going, well, it's a little up from maybe 5-6 years ago, but it's down dramatically since the 90s.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and from there, the youth offenders are there aren't really as many as there were. Didn't you guys have to cut down? What, LP's closed now?
LP's closed, a
He's
bunch of
closed.
camps
A lot of camps
closed.
closed.
A
Yeah.
lot,
So
yeah. They don't have the kids for it. They don't have the space.
yeah. So to me, it's like, oh, I think we are moving in a better place, and I think we should continue with it because hopefully soon we'll only need one
Right,
institution
right,
for everybody.
right, right.
Yeah, and hopefully it can
Yeah.
come to the point that ultimately, ideally, none.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Because the reality is, research shows it doesn't help. It doesn't help kids. You know what I mean? It makes them worse. They're around other sophisticated kids that have been, system impacted in a more severe way, with DCFS, and they're just smarter, and they can really groom these other kids that are not as experienced. So that's also dangerous.
Yeah, definitely. How do you stop? What do you do with children like that? The more sophisticated kids. How do you deal with them? The ones that are like, I ain't saying shit. I'm not doing nothing. And because there are kids that believe that they're more sophisticated than the adults, and they're gonna they say, I'll be honest. If I were in there, I would look at you and say, I'm gonna game her up. I'm gonna game her up, right? I'm gonna spit that shit, right? So I'm gonna say what I think you want to hear, in order to see what I can get out of you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you break down these kids to help them understand you are a child still, right?
Yeah.
Like they're children, and
hmm
that and approach it in a not judgmental way to let them know you still understand where they're coming from.
I mean, it's challenging. I think I'm getting easier at it, but at first, a lot of reminding them that they are children and that, they're always going to be children in my eyes, no matter what they say. You'll hear crazy stuff like, oh, well, I was in a relationship with a 50-year-old, just really weird, disgusting things. And I remind them, well, give me that person's name because that's illegal.
Yeah.
And then they're
Yeah.
like, no, well, and they always change their story. But reminding them constantly they're children, reminding them that pretty much I feel, you can never say you've heard it all, but I feel like I've heard a lot. So
Yeah.
reminding them, like, you're not the first kiddo that tries it. So, and just a lot of it's so hard because you have to break down a lot of their dysfunctional thinking and mentality, just the
Yeah.
way they see women in general.
Oh yeah.
And just kind of breaking that down. And it's very challenging, but at the end of the day, I would say I would have more successes than losses. So that kind of just keeps me going, and not forcing them ever to do anything they don't want to do. If they don't even want to go to the office and talk, we could talk outside, we could talk in the game room, giving them a lot of voice and choice. I don't think they're used to that.
Yeah.
And I think giving them that opportunity to really choose what they want to do. And a lot of them don't know how to choose because they're like, I don't know, you pick, you tell me. And I'm like, no, this is about you. Like, I want you to share, like, where do you prefer to meet? Just simple things like that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No problem. And it's a trip that you mentioned something earlier, and we're kind of going back to it right now, is that trust issue, especially when it comes to young males and their perception of females, right? So I was a guy who was a child who was very, very guilty of seeing women in a not so positive light. Part of that, I think, looking back, was my mom. She meant to discipline me. She had me at 16 years old, so she really, she was learning on the job, and she was a little physical. Like it would get pretty bad, right? Like I'll be like, oh shit. Yeah. So I took it as she's just beating the shit out of me because my dad beats the shit out of her, right? Like that's the way I kind of looked at it. Like, so I kind of had I don't know. My dad, he was kind of an asshole too. May he rest in peace. But I kind of looked up to him because it's like, damn, nobody tells him shit. Like I kind of felt powerless, right? Like my mom would beat me down. I felt powerless. And the way my dad treated her kind of made it seem like, oh shit, like that's how you get power over women. That's how you get them to bow down and fucking not act like that, right? So, but that's definitely a warped way of thinking. I don't think like that now. But how common is that? I don't want, like, of course I'm not asking you which children do that, right? But how common is that
Yeah.
within a population like that?
Probably a good, especially nowadays, probably a good 95%.
No way.
So I think, yeah. So I think the best way to, deal with that is take it head on and kind of explore. I just, I just kind of assume this is the life that they're living, and I kind of share little things, and I kind of ask them like, am I kind of on the right track? Am I accurate? And then they'll just kind of like nod, and that's when I know, okay, this is the type of kid, this is the mentality. So I kind of share a lot about myself. I kind of, I tell them, I know I'm expecting a lot from you and for you to open up and share your story. So I want to tell you a little bit about me if you're interested in hearing. I didn't grow up too much different from you. My parents are still living, so I'll keep their confidentiality, but because I'm still scared. But I will say that I know exactly what you're talking about and what you were sharing, and I just tell them straight up, like, look, this is how it was, and it doesn't have to be this way. Just know that you're in a safe space. If you want to share, cool. We have mostly male therapists where I'm at, so I have that advantage that a lot of the kids, sadly, they like the men, but they don't really want to go deep with them because they assume those gender roles that, oh,
Yeah.
I'm vulnerable and I'm this and that because I'm
And
opening
let
up
him
to
see
a
me as
man.
weak. Yeah.
Yeah, so they'll be like, I'd rather just talk to that lady. So then it's so much easier that they'll just open up to me a lot quicker. So that's good, and I get to see the baby side of them. Really hard kids that they act really hard with their peers and with other staff. I've had them in there crying, bawling, and I'll shed a few tears, and they're like, "Why are you crying?" And I'm like, "Because like this is healing. It's healing for you, and it's healing for me. And I think that this is powerful. This is something that you need, and this is something that makes me feel like I'm really respecting your space and validating you, and so I think it's good. There's more successes than losses, so
Yeah.
that's really good.
And I think it's important to show some kind of feeling and empathy because I know for me, for years, it was difficult. I to understand empathy, really
Mm-hmm.
embrace empathy. I really didn't have empathy. It was more
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm gonna do what I do and fuck it. Whatever happens to you, that's
Mm-hmm.
on you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
so. Um, I don't know if I'm wrong with this, but I think a lot of the times, especially when you're young, uh, children lose a lot of that. It's easier for them to lose that empathy, but it could be restored. Am I wrong with that, or?
Oh no, you're absolutely right. I think it could be restored. I think the adolescent brain is just not empathic at all. It's all about them, and it's all about what they're trying to get. And I think it's a normal part of development.
Mhm.
But they can definitely learn that empathy. I feel like once they're ready and with the right people and at the right age, I think it can happen.
Dope. Yeah, because I know for a fact that somebody can learn to be empathetic because that's what I learned, and now I can't even watch certain movies because I mean get brought to tears and shit. And be like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've seen it, so I know it can happen, and I'm I'm just glad when it happens because it's like, hey, these kids are having kids, and they're raising the next generation and the next community of a cycle of either dysfunction or health, and so that's a good thing.
What stages, or what do you think we can do to prevent uh, the criminality of children before they even enter any facility? What can we do as a society, and even, or even let's shrink it down more to a community? What can we
Hmm.
do as a community uh, to prevent these kids from walking down those trails? What kind of programs should a community offer, and
Hmm.
what kind of things should we have set up for them?
Man, I ask myself that all the time. I think poverty is a major a major thing we need to tackle as a community. I think with poverty comes a lot of not just abuse, but like, robbery, stealing, trying to get your basic needs met. So I think poverty is something we need to tackle. We need to tackle more support in terms of parents that are working, these crazy hours, and they're not able to spend that quality time with their children. So more support, more programming to help kids, after school, tutoring, a lot of education on just healthy parenting, and again, but having different hours, because sometimes they want to have these classes during work hours and these parents can't make it. So they need to be weekends or, evenings, or they need to meet the community where they're at, because we can't just say, oh, we're offering all these things to you guys, but it's unrealistic too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I remember as a kid, there were a lot of programs that they offered, and they wanted my mother to drive there. We didn't have a car. So it's like, is she gonna jump on the bus, leave us all there to get over there, just so she could learn a few tips when she has to take care of us? It's like that's not gonna happen. Yeah. So, and then there's also the trust factor. Like, what do they know?
Exactly.
Yeah. So to
Exactly.
me, that was a huge thing. Bringing what I felt were outsiders into our community to teach us. I was like, they ain't gonna teach us shit. Like, who the fuck are they? So
Absolutely. Like, they don't know anything about our community. And that's where I think I have that advantage, amongst my other, let's say the Caucasian colleagues. They don't have that trust and rapport as quick as I can have it. They don't speak Spanish to the parents the way I can. It's just different. And you kind of trust your own quicker than you will someone else.
yeah, it is. I think it has less to do with like colorism, racism. It's more cultural, right? Like, if you understand where they're coming from, you understand, like, okay, she kind of gets me because she knows what it's like to be here. Because I have white homies, like straight white homies. They like, but they know what it's like to be there with us, right? Like they've been there.
Right.
Yeah, as opposed to somebody that's like, you could have a Chicano that has a fucking sweater around his neck playing tennis. And be like, who the fuck is he? He has no fucking idea what we're doing over here. So yeah, I think a lot of times it's cultural, and for us, I think you could correct me if I'm wrong here too. I think within the streets, especially the barrios, the ghettos, we have our own sense of culture. Because a lot of times we feel like we're rejected by the larger large society. What do you think about that?
Right. Oh, absolutely. That's why, I don't change the way obviously I dress professional to work, I'm covered up because I'm working with teenage boys. I understand all that. But, I'll still wear my hoop earrings. I still wear my makeup the way I will, because I feel like you have to be yourself and you have to be genuine. Because if I go in there trying to look like somebody else, it's just not going to work. And I don't feel effective. I feel like I'm being a fraud, and that's not fair to my clients. So
Yeah,
I like to be myself.
definitely. Well, when everything opens up, what was the acronyms you have again? For the new system?
The new one, SYTF.
SYTF, and you said what was that again?
I believe it's Secure Youth Treatment Facility.
Secure Youth Treatment Facility. Okay, so when they open that, what would you like to see be implemented in their daily routine?
Definitely a lot of sports programs. I think even though not all our kids are very athletic or sport inclined, because I think if they were, some of them would be avoiding the streets because they'd be so busy in football practice, basketball, and all that. But I think some of them have it in them. They just weren't given the opportunity, because if you think about it, all those programs are so expensive, uniforms, and takes time to take them to practice and all these things. So I like the idea of the sport programs. I really like when you guys talk about that whole victim awareness that you guys used to do at Nellis. I mean, I think that's really cool. Definitely. I would love to see something like that. I've never experienced anything like that. So I think they should bring something like that back. Like you said, you guys were young and it was kind of silly at the moment, but I think it planted some seeds that eventually kind of got watered, once you guys got older and got to see, okay, this is what they were talking about.
I agree.
You know?
Reason I agree is because there are things that I remember from that those sessions now. I don't remember the same thing when I took parenting in there. I don't remember the same thing when I took gangs. The only thing I did that was effective when I took the gang awareness is the gang coordinator told us, what would you do if somebody walked up to your mom and slapped her in the face? I was like, what the fuck? I was like, man, I'll fucking bomb on that fool. And then he says, well, you guys should start bombing on yourselves because that's what you do every time you return and this and that. That's the only thing I remember. But from the victims class, I remember so much more. And I think you're right. It does plant the seed. Even if you're too young to really grasp it, it is planting seeds. And sports, at least for me, when I was a kid, I hated sports because I couldn't play. But maybe if I were to give it a chance and like you got to go out there, you better get your ass out there and play. I would have been able to enjoy it. I was the kind of kid. I was an asshole. When I was a kid, I used to like playing basketball, right? And I used to hate when I'd be like the second or third last picked. So what I do is I'd say, fuck that. I'd get the ball and I'd kick that shit over the fucking wall. And I'd say, fuck you guys' game, man. This game sucks.
Nobody's playing.
Yeah, this fucking game sucks. Anyway, you guys want to squares and walk away like a jackass. It's like, dog, you're so insecure. You're like, what the fuck? Just play your position, learn how to play. But I agree. I think when you have a sports program, it teaches camaraderie, unity, and especially if you have like enemies. You have enemies in there, right? I'm from Monte, kid from Ballin Park, go in there, and we have to be on the same team. We have to learn how to trust each other. That could break down certain barriers. And so
absolutely.
That's why I look at it. What do you think?
I think so. I felt like I experienced that as well when I was working at Camp Page when it was still a fire camp. I felt like I saw enemies like looking out for each other. I remember two of my clients that were rivals that telling me one saved another one from falling off the mountain. And I was like in tears. And the kid is like, Miss, why are you crying? Like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, you don't understand how powerful that is. Like, you would never have this opportunity if you were not in this team, in this fire camp. And they were just tripping out. Like, well, I just thought like that's fucked up to see him like die. And I'm like, well, yeah, but that's empathy right there. Like, you wouldn't be saying that a few months ago. And they were kind of like, all right, I'm getting too soft. Shut up, Birdie.
No, it's true though. It's true because what we do on the streets and with most gang members are really guilty of is propaganda. Most gang members are guilty of propaganda, and they'll feed into it. They'll say, ain't nobody like us. These other vatos are lame. Fuck these fools. They can't do it like us, right? And you're just basically comparing yourself and talking about how big and bad your neighborhood is and how everyone else is soft as fuck and whatever, right? But you're kind of dehumanizing everybody else. What you call them, lames, fucking punks, whatever you want to call them. And then when you meet them and you kind of, at least for me, I expected to just roll over these fools because like these fools are a bunch of punks, right? They and then when you kind of see them fighting back, like, all right, they're with it. So when you kind of humanize them, when you're like, okay, like not only are they with it, but they're people just like me. They're a person just like me. And they have a family to go home to. And if I am not gonna watch them fall down a hill or get burned to death. We're on the same fucking team. And not only that, you kind of see like your survival is also based on them being alive, right? So yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's a real dope thing. Do they still have fire camps at all, or is that illegal now?
That's the thing that got taken away. The sports program got taken away.
Oh, so now the sports have Kilpatrick?
Yeah, no, they're not doing it anymore. So it's like a lot of things that we're working at a point in time, they take them away. And I feel like we can't just depend on just therapy. We need to have, because therapy could be a lot of things. You know, we need to have other programs and other
arts programs, music.
Yeah, right. Not all kids the same. Like you said, you didn't like sports, but maybe you would like music and, you know, have like a DJ class or I don't know, just something different that, you know, they won't know what they like until they try it.
That's so true. You have to open up the opportunities to them, especially kids that have never seen anything. Right? Kids that I remember when I was bragging about my neighborhood because my neighborhood is in El Monte and South El Monte. And I was like, we got like 5 McDonald's, 3 Burger Kings. And it's like we make it seem like we have everything, right? But it's like when you get older and you start understanding art, literature, just different things outside of your world, you kind of see like, whoa, we really didn't have much. And I
Yeah.
think that's what you have to kind of do to a lot of these kids, is open up their eyes to see the world. And I was trying to tell a youngster not too long ago. He's really into girls, right? I told him, why just get with the girls here in Monte? Why not be? Because sometimes you got people at their level,
Right,
right?
where they're at.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I told him, why not be able to jump on a plane and meet up with one of your girls in France
Right,
or
right.
in Japan, right? Like, I told him, you can work towards that, dog. Like, you don't have to be stuck right here and see the same girls that you've seen your whole life. Like, explore the world. There's a lot out there. And that kind of, I seen a little light go off. Hopefully that worked somewhat, like, or at least planted a seed, because hopefully he's not going out there just for that, but be able to see that there's
Yeah, the
more out
world.
there. Yeah, there's culture out there that you've never even knew existed.
No, absolutely. I always do that. I do like a little Google Maps with them on the computer, and we look at their neighborhood, and sometimes that helps them open up more. Like, this is where I got shot, this is where this happened.
Shit,
And then
yeah.
I always say, like, well, let's go a little bit outside of your neighborhood. Like, where's a place you'd want to look at? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, let's check out Italy. Let's check out, Japan or whatever. And they're kind of like, what? And they just trip out because
Yeah.
it's so foreign to them. But I'm like, you can do this. You don't have to be stuck in your whatever 10-mile radius or whatever it is. So yeah, I like to do that too. I think that
Definitely.
helps open their eyes. Yeah.
Definitely. And before we wrap it up, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, just thanks for the opportunity to share on something that I think is very, very important and so important to our community. And I really enjoy just talking about our youth and how we can help them and how we can make the next generation better.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and thank you very much. Opened up a lot of ideas in my head, and hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
we'll can hear back from you one day, and you can let us know how everything's going.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Javier. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. And with that, we out. Peace.
Okay.